The next topic that I will give key phrases of being positive versus being negative, and maybe even being objective.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be all of those things. I don't see how you can't be all of those things and really making, I think authentic content is kind of overused as far as I think the way that people are using that now, I don't know if I agree with. I guess being genuine. If you're being genuine about it, you have to, at the same time, you talk about awesome cards, but you have to also call out the shill bidding and call out some of the weird stuff that goes on in the hobby. And I think when people see that you talk about all the things, then they respect you more for it. They don't look at you as like, oh God, this guy's just like, snowed. He just thinks that everything is great all the time, or he doesn't think that everything's terrible all the time. It's a balance.
Yeah, I mean, people say that, hey, I'm negative and this and that. Yeah, I could see why people see that, and it's not good for the hobby. But a lot of people are coming into this sports card world to invest, flip, etc. And I showed some content before about an individual. I forgot his name. I think something Marks, and he talked about when you're investing, you need to be objective. And I just see a lot of people saying that if you're not positive, you're bad for the hobby, and that's not going to bring in the billionaire investors that could help propel this market higher. And I'm just looking at it from the fact that, look, we were going through this pandemic, and now after this pandemic, prices are probably going to come back to normal. And look, I mean, this is becoming more of a normalized market like in 2019. And speaking of all that, like, what do you think about what made the market go crazy? I know we were talking about before we came on that we touched base a little bit on finance topics, but like, what do you think? Why did cards go up like crazy a couple of years ago? Like, what's going on now? Do you agree with me on that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I do. It's kind of a pretty common argument to the effect of stimulus money came into the market, which really kind of moved up the lower to mid end, because the lower to mid end is really what suffered, I guess, over the last 12 months the most. You see the high end is starting to kind of, starting to drop. We can talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, the kind of that lower end to mid end, and then the combination of just everybody being home. I consider it a black swan event where just everything kind of worked, and then we talk about inflation, and just kind of the zero, the negative interest rate, environment. It all kind of worked together to make it all happen. But then I also do think there's a lot of people that just got back into the hobby that are 40 or whatever. I'm 41, about to turn 41. That got back in because they heard about it. They were home and had time. So I do think that was really the main crux of it. And when you look at historical data on cards, you see kind of a fairly flat line. You see some movement, but it's nothing like what you saw 2 years ago. So I think that it's hard to argue against those points.
All right. Honesty, I'll read this one comment. Ron Fig, honesty is sometimes negative, and if you avoid honesty because of money, you're selling your soul for a quick buck. Yeah, I agree with that. There's some influencers and content creators that are just only focused on being really, really, really optimistic. And in my opinion, being really, really optimistic, you're not living in the real world, and you may be trying to pump or hype some products. Maybe that's not the intention. Maybe you just want the hobby to have green shoots but all the time, but that's not how markets work, in my opinion.
Well, and also I think if you differentiate between just being positive overall about cards and the hobby, but then also when you're talking about price points, those are two different things. So I feel like you can be really pumped about just cards. You love cards, you love collecting cards, but if you're talking about price points, there's so many different factors that are going to affect prices that, just being positive and making positive content is not going to keep prices high. There's so many other things that are going on.
Oh yeah, indeed. And I'm glad that other content creators are trying to be more objective, and I think that is good long term for the hobby, and for especially for those that are younger than us, that it's not always about Gary Vee and being positive. I think that helps in your own personal life and achieving your goals. There's no doubt about that. But just in terms of investing, speculating, etc., I don't think that's the right way to go.
And also going back to, when cards went up, let's just call it that, you go back to March 2020, the same thing happened in equities and in crypto. Look at where crypto was, look at where stocks were.
Right.
Same, look at real estate. Look
Right.
what happened to real estate from March 2020 to today. I mean, and then all of these things are kind of moving in unison. Crypto is down, the stock market is, still up, but kind of come down a little bit. Collectibles have come down, but I mean, a lot of these things kind of move together. They're not the same. They're very different. We can talk about that too, but people act like it's just cards, and that's not really reality.
Yep. Rule number one, since we're talking about investing, by Will, minimize emotion. It will always be there, and you must fight it. Yeah, indeed. That's
You
why
had
you
a
need to be
you had a guest on. I watched a live stream, one of your live streams, maybe like a month ago, and I can't remember the name of the guest, but
John. John, was it the snake oil one?
I think it was.
Yeah.
You had three guys on originally, and then one guy I think had to drop off
Yeah,
because,
yeah, the audio was, yeah, something was wrong with his internet.
and the other guy, he was, well, you guys were both making the same point, but it was a good point, and he was basically making the statement of, look, to be like a very good investor, you have to go against the grain all the time. You have to do unpopular things. You're buying into, stocks and different things, collectibles that people aren't really paying attention to. If you look at the people that have done so well in cards, they really were in cards before the boom, not during the boom.
Yeah,
They really got
exactly.
in, they were in early. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Not
mean,
yeah, it's not to say, I mean, it's not to say that everything, it's like you can buy stuff that's down and it never goes up, but that's part of investing, is not just buying what's hot and FOMOing and, all that stuff to be good.
yeah, you have to basically buy things that are quiet.
Quiet. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yep. In 2018, I know you said you got back into sports cards at that time, and same thing for me. I was slowly but steadily getting into cards, and I was just buying then weird stuff during the pandemic because people weren't going into it. Now those cards, have gone up, and I've gotten rid of pretty much about half of those, or three-fourths of those. All righty, let's go through